Singapore is called the Switzerland of Asia. I didn't even know that. Why is it called that? Primarily because of the thriving private banking industry and financial centers. So when Paul told me that Singapore is called the Switzerland of Asia, it gave me the idea to make this video, to look more closely to the differences and similarities between Singapore and Switzerland. Also later, when I was reading that book here, I figured out that Singapore is also called Switzerland of the East. I'm Swiss, born and raised in Bern, Switzerland, the capital, but I haven't been living in Switzerland anymore since 2011. Yes, I went back for some visits sometimes, but then for 8.5 years, I haven't even done that anymore. Then after 8.5 years, December 2024, I went back to Switzerland to surprise my family for Christmas. Here is that video. So in those 8.5 years where I didn't go back to Switzerland, but also I changed so much. So I'm not an expert in Switzerland, but still, let's compare those two countries, Singapore and Switzerland. Yeah, and of course, I'm not an expert on Singapore. I was just there for one time, actually 2 times, if you count one time just being at the airport there. Both Paul and I say lots of rules in both countries. Both are very green, but Singapore has no seasons. Well, yeah, it has a dry season and a wet season, but the temperature is more or less kind of always the same, hot and humid. Switzerland has 4 seasons, just summer, spring, fall, and winter. The temperatures can get from freezing crazy cold to really, really hot during summer. And well, it also depends where you are in Switzerland, but yeah, freezing cold to super hot and humid. I don't know if super crazy hot is the right term for the heat in Switzerland. It can get really hot, but maybe pretty hot and humid. Yeah. And yes, both countries are humid. The big difference is in Switzerland, there is no AC in apartments and houses. That's why it feels so much hotter than it actually is. Humidity makes it worse anyways. It's colder than it feels colder than it actually is, and it feels hotter than it actually is. So, and in Singapore, there are ACs in all the apartments, in houses. Yes, so that's the big difference. Yeah, I love it. Just like in Switzerland, the tap water in Singapore is such high quality, you can drink it right out of the tap, of the faucet. That's the first thing I wrote down about Singapore. But my enthusiasm went away very quickly when I did more research about it. So more about Singapore's water a bit later. So in Switzerland, the tap water comes from the mountains. And it's said it's the world's best water. Well, I'm not going to argue with that. Of course, Singapore's water doesn't come from the mountains. Here really quickly, Singapore's highest hill, Bukit Timah Hill, 164 meters, 538 feet. Switzerland's highest mountain, Dufourspitze, 4,634 meters, 15,203 feet. Yeah, that's a big difference. So yeah, hill, mountain. Oh yes, and my dad actually was on Dufourspitze in August 1974. And then he tried to climb it up again sometime in the 90s, but he got a nosebleed so badly already in Spiez, and he just didn't wanna stop. It was crazy. So he only got to the Monte Rosa Hütte, and then in the same evening, a helicopter had to fly him to the hospital in Brieg. He broke a blood vessel. Anyways, back to Singapore's tap water. Where does it come from? Okay, so raw water is filled into reservoirs. Raw water is untreated water from rain and rivers. That's called raw water. But that's not enough water. So about 40% also comes from Johor Bahru in Malaysia. The water undergoes a rigorous treatment and gets strictly controlled. Disinfection, and here it comes, the enthusiasm killer, fluoridation. During dry seasons, new water gets added as well. New water is spelled all capitals N-E-W, and then no capitals A-T-E-R. So new water is a brand, I think. So new water is treated used water. It gets treated with microfiltration, ultrafiltration, reverse osmosis, and ultraviolet disinfection. So here, really quickly about the enthusiasm killer, fluoride. So fluoride is a poison. I asked Paul, who I think is very knowledgeable, what amount of fluoride he thinks is good. You know, some toxins have benefits in like really small quantities, but Paul's opinion, zero fluoride is the best for the body. And I trust his judgment in that. For sure, I trust him much, much more than the WHO's judgment. Singapore's water has 0.5 milligrams per liter fluoride. So we decided for those 6 weeks we were living in Singapore, we said, okay, that's okay, we're just gonna drink the tap water. But for example, if we would live there, hell no, we would buy bottled water, make sure that there's no fluoride in it. But we decided for those 6 weeks, it's okay, because bottled water is quite expensive in Singapore. Oh yeah, also something else, I don't know the prices now, but compared to other countries, bottled water is expensive in Singapore and in Switzerland. So there's a similarity, there is. And yeah, my first big enthusiasm about drinking tap water in Singapore completely disappeared. I'm so disappointed, Singapore, really. Raw milk is illegal in Singapore. Just some raw milk products like cheese are allowed. In Switzerland, raw milk is legal, but it's not allowed to be advertised. And you can only get it on farms, so you can't get it in stores. So like in Switzerland and most countries, there are crosswalks in Singapore, but not all of them in Singapore are protected. In Switzerland, it's the law for drivers to yield to pedestrians. At least when I made my driving license, it's the law. Everywhere, you have to, in a car, you have to yield in front of pedestrians. I don't know how it is now. I think it's still the same. In certain parts of Asia, it's expected from the pedestrians to yield for the vehicles, to the vehicles. That was really new for me because growing up in Switzerland, it's like, as a pedestrian, you're always in the right. Well, you should still be careful and watch. So, and in Singapore, you have crosswalks that are protected, like in Switzerland. They are clearly marked on both sides with yellow lines. So the drivers should yield for the pedestrians. And you have other crosswalks that are not protected. So the drivers usually don't yield for pedestrians. So you gotta know that. Public transportation. Both Singapore and Switzerland have very great public transportations. But in Switzerland, it's so much more expensive. It's crazy. That's what I fucking hate about Switzerland. Really, it's ridiculously crazy. I feel like normal human beings can't afford that. It's really so crazy expensive. But public transportation is much more on time in Switzerland than in Singapore. Yeah, Swiss punctuality. Food prices. Switzerland is expensive, and so are the food prices there. Especially meat, especially beef. Beef is the most expensive in Switzerland. Of all the countries, beef is the most expensive in Switzerland. Unfortunately, meat and seafood, and especially beef, is also expensive in Singapore. Of course, not as expensive as in Switzerland, but still expensive. But eggs are not expensive in Singapore, but apparently, again, Switzerland won by being the country where eggs are the most expensive. And I don't think they have flats of eggs in Switzerland. A flat contains 30 eggs. At least when I was living there, they only had like, the biggest cartons were like 6. That changed now, I'm pretty sure. Yes, I was just there. So you can get more than 6 eggs in one carton, but I haven't seen any flats of 30 eggs. And you can get those everywhere in Singapore. So meat and seafood, expensive in both countries. Eggs totally affordable in Singapore. I found flats for around 6 to 7 Singaporean dollars. That's about $4.70 to $5.49 US dollars. So totally affordable. Takeaway food at hawker markets are totally inexpensive in Singapore. Super affordable. In Switzerland, takeaway food, fast food is expensive. Sundays are Ruhetage in Switzerland, quiet days. When I was a child, and now it got better, but when I was a child, Sundays, nothing was open. It was like everything was closed. It really sucked. Now for many years already, at the train station, there are stores that are open, and even like a Migros, a big grocery store. So not just gas stations and really expensive, even more expensive than the others, like little stores. So also just regular grocery stores. So that changed now for years. But still, Sundays are still considered Ruhetage. And still, in many apartments, on Sundays, you're not allowed to use the washing machines. And you don't have your own washing machine in Switzerland most of the times. There are washing machines below the ground level, usually in apartments, and for the entire apartment to use as all the people in there. So usually when you live in an apartment, you don't have your own washing machine. And as I mentioned, still in a lot of apartments on Sundays, you're not allowed to wash your laundry. Also something I always really disliked in Switzerland, because when you have a regular normal job, you work from Monday through Friday, maybe even Saturdays, and when do you have time to go shopping? When do you have time to go to the post office, to the bank, to do all that stuff, to do your laundry? On Sundays! Sundays are definitely not quiet days in Singapore, but I read online that construction work is restricted. But in the elevator of the apartment building complex we were living in, there was a note about the renovation work on the childcare center. They listed the dates when they'll be working on it. And it was every Saturday and Sunday for 8 weeks. And yes, we could hear it. But it wasn't that bad. It was totally okay. I still don't like Sundays in Switzerland. Just so much is closed, and what is open is totally overcrowded. It rains in both countries a lot. That's why they are so green. Yeah, in Switzerland there are some summer storms and it's raining, and it's actually still very warm, hot outside. But usually when it's raining in Switzerland, it's gray, it's cold, and it rains forever, and days, and it's so depressing, and it's cold and gray, and I know I said that all already. In Singapore, it's never cold. So when it rains, it's still nice and warm, and actually nice warm, not too hot anymore, because it's kind of raining, it's nice, it's kind of cooled down, because it never gets cold. So there I didn't mind the rain that much at all, and sometimes I even liked it. But of course it still was humid, duh, it was raining. I'm sure there are many more similarities and differences. I could compare Switzerland and Singapore, but I think that's enough for this video, and these are the ones I mostly saw and realized when I was in Singapore. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay incomparable.